Welcome to the Postgame. I'm Michael Brooks, along with the team, everybody in the extended TMBS universe. Thank you, patrons. Thank you, our visitor. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Dave. Visitor is checking his stream. And now, wait, Artesia Balthrop, where are you going? You ready?
I'm here.
You got another minute? You need another minute?
He didn't come.
Okay, all right. You go take it. All right, Artesia's back.
I'm back, guys. I'm back.
I'm back. Here. But let's make sure the man can get back in. Did you get it? Operation successful?
The eagle has landed.
The eagle has landed.
Thank you, guys, for patience.
We've got nothing but patience. Well, that's actually really not true. I just want to say on the post game that we actually I shouldn't say that. No comment. I was thinking about patience. And how some people whine that on the majority report I'm short with callers. And I was just thinking about that. And I just wanted to say, like, I'm 1,000% right. And if anything, I could be sharper. You know, you see, what's funny is when people, like, I understand, first of all, I'm actually nice to most callers. But I always thought that people who like complained were like actually the callers themselves, which like I understand that sucks. Like if you've been waiting online and the call doesn't, we don't talk for 30 minutes. I get it. But I never understood people who were just like, hey, like, why didn't you give that guy a chance to like breathe in the phone for like 10 minutes and make like a random counterproductive point? Like,
people don't like confrontation.
It's not even confrontation. It's just like, I don't know. Like I was thinking about that today. Like if you call in and this is primo post game content and you say like, ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement. I will no longer be watching the Young Turks. Like what do you want me to do with that particular piece of information? I mean, like on any number of levels, like, the personal connections, that like, okay. I think it's like, even if you framed it as like, hey, I've got some big concerns about how they're covering such and such an issue, maybe we could have an angle there, but I don't know. I've just been noticing, but I totally stand by my, demand for high performance from callers because I don't believe in the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Well, Tom Sharpling's the best show. I think has the best culture for calls, which is very, very quick hook, but it's not personal.
It's totally not personal.
Get to the point. We don't need preface.
It just happens to be like doing a show.
Here's a pro tip: never say you're nervous. It's a waste of time. Just make your point.
I really hope this guy was pranking me because there was a guy today who literally is like, he calls in. It's like, this could be a new character, just like phone caller. It's like, hello, where are you calling from? Oh, hi. I think you're on. Where are you calling from? Where are you calling from? Oh, hi. Yeah, I've been waiting for like 3 months to get on the show. Okay, well, you're on now. What would you like to talk about? Yeah, it's been like 3 months. Okay. Yep. Sorry. I mean, it's a lot of people trying to call in. Anyways, what did you have on your mind? Well, this isn't something you've talked about for 3 months, but as I said, I've been waiting 3 months, so it's a little bit off topic, but I'd like to talk about it. And at this point, I could see myself visually. I'm just like, okay, well, what is the topic you would like to discuss, caller? Well, I don't know if it's been a while since you've talked about it, but as I said, I've been waiting for 3 months. Anyways, here's a random topic which you guys mentioned tangentially like 4 months ago, and I have a programmatic concern about it. Okay, I hear you. I'm not sure I could answer that right now, but I think I probably stand by the same general principle. Yeah, because I was thinking about... And then by the time, and then I say thank you for the call. Look, if there is a groundswell of demand that go on for another 10 minutes, I'm open to hearing it. if you become a patron of my show.
Well, I mean, you're making fun of him. Maybe he's from rural America where reception is terrible.
No, he's not.
It's really bad.
No, that particular gentleman was calling in from California, and way to have my back, Artesia.
I mean, he could have been from the Valley where reception is bad.
Everybody has bad reception in the Valley.
Whenever I'm in LA, I have the worst reception, just so
That's
you know.
true, I do too. Just
really
so you
bad
know.
telephone.
Just so you know, it's terrible reception. And I'm like Trump. Like I have like a persecution complex, because then there's like 5 other people who call who are awesome, and I try to help, and I actually feel bad that we can't even like do as good a job as we can on some of the questions. But then everybody remembers, like, I remember, like, you know, Tom from Oklahoma wanted to tell a story about his stag party from 1989 and why it made him think differently about Jerry Brown's run for governor in 2006, and you totally cut him off 6 minutes in. Anyways.
Who's on the phone?
Ben Burgess is on the phone.
Yeah, Ben.
Ben, are you ready? Ben, you ready for your song?
Born ready.
I want to go to mockery really badly.
I
Ben,
will.
So please go.
Okay.
You got to restrain me. Debunk all of it. Logical analysis. You're going to show us how to argue that. Go.
This is based on data from a bunch of different countries. There's abundant evidence that at this point that that's bullshit. Breaking down these right-wing arguments and looking at how they're supposed to fit together.
Okay, break it down. Break it down. Break it down. Break it down. Ben Burgess, he's the author of Give Them an Argument, Logic for the Left. He teaches logic and philosophy at Perimeter College at Georgia State University. He also is a proprietor of a very good Patreon page, which you should join me in becoming a patron of. And he does the debunk for us every week. Ben, what are we debunking this week?
So this is from Neera Tanden, who's the head of the Center for American Progress, which is a institution that stands for progress in America, which you can tell from looking at a list of their funders. You know, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, all the usual friends and allies of progress.
Right. Absolutely. Of green policies and equity for gay, lesbian, and transgender people. And Ben, what did she tweet out that caught your debunk eye?
Yeah. So she, the context of this is that she was talking about Medicare for all. And of course, she's advocating the Mayor Pete, Beto O'Rourke, Joe Biden, Tulsi Gabbard, by the way, view, which is Medicare for all who want it. In other words, a public option rather than a single payer system. And she cited some poll that said that most Americans don't really understand the distinction between the two anyway. Or, that most people think that Medicare for all maybe means Medicare for all for choice, probably because people like her have done so much to blur the line between the two and miseducate people on this topic. Just parenthetically, I've got to say my all-time favorite argument against Medicare for all is, hey, when we give people all of these anti-Medicare for all talking points without any refutations, support for it goes down.
Right. Who would have thunk that?
Right. Yeah, no, it's amazing. But then she builds up over the course of the tweets to her master argument, which is right here. Imagine Trump controlling everyone's health care. Yikes.
Is this on, we have this on screen? Imagine Trump controlling everyone's health care. Yikes. Obviously, the word yikes is a big giveaway there. Very problematic word. I would discourage its use. Usually means you're ultra annoying. Not always, of course, but often. So I'm assuming, Ben, that she has a follow-up tweet that would put this in context where she says, well, come to think of it, if the federal government having control of healthcare by providing every single human being in this country healthcare coverage is frightening to me because it might mean that there is a government where, and by the way, this could apply even just as easily to Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid, but it's somehow scary because Donald Trump is president. I'm assuming that the follow-up tweets, she said, we need to immediately abolish the drone program and at least cut the military budget by like 80% because Donald Trump could be in control of the most powerful killing machine known to the human race. Yikes.
Yeah, you would think so. Oddly enough, I didn't see those follow-up tweets, so I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But it's interesting because when it comes to something like the drone program, the reason to worry about a right-wing racist Republican being in control of it is pretty obvious, that this gives them the unilateral power to kill people outside of war zones without a judicial process anywhere. And this power would likely be abused by somebody like Trump, as in fact it has been. But it's a little less obvious what the concern is here, because you can just as easily say, hey, imagine even if you go beyond Medicare for all to a system where government has more control over healthcare than that, like the NHS in Britain. Imagine Margaret Thatcher having control over everybody's healthcare. Yikes. Well, I mean, it was yikes in the sense that she made cuts to it, but that's about it. Right. And one of the things that made this really striking, and this is sort of worth talking about here, besides the fact that Nero's a friend of the show and we all like to see what she's up to, is that this is the head of one of the biggest progressive quotes think tanks in the United States. This is somebody who's a name who was talked about for Hillary Clinton's chief of staff potentially, and she's using the most kind of bottom drawer libertarian. I'll bet you didn't think of that argument ever.
Right.
Which is
it's very I mean, look, I'm somebody who, after 2016, when Trump was elected, was very much of the mind that you need a left and center-left alliance in the context of the Trump presidency. That's the same reason, obviously, I mean, supported Hillary Clinton is a weird term, but understood that she needed to be there instead of Donald Trump. But, and again, it's one thing to just have, look, if you want to defend having a multi-tier health system that doesn't work for millions of people, I guess, sure. And I stack the deck in that description, but we can have an argument. But this is like the type of argument that, again, I mean, really, as you say, it's bottom shelf libertarian stuff, and it shows, the actual difficulty in building those alliances.
Yeah. So I
thought someone like Neera Tanden, I was naive. I thought there was a set of people that might at least step slightly back from this total disingenuousness. Briefly.
Right. Yeah, you might hope. So just to briefly hit the obvious points here, Donald Trump would not, in fact, control everybody's health care if we had Medicare for all, any more than Donald Trump controls senior citizens' health care right now, or Donald Trump controls low-income people's health care right now, or Donald Trump controls every public school in the country. Just because something is a public institution doesn't mean that the President of the United States exercises direct micromanagement control over its day-to-day operations. That one would think would be obvious, but apparently needs to be said. He certainly can damage it in the sense that he can propose or sign off on cuts to it. But if you're worried about that, that actually gives you a reason to support Medicare for all, not a reason to oppose it. Because if you're worried about cuts, well, if you have something like Medicaid that's means tested, so lots of people, lots of working people don't think that it's ever going to apply to them, even though it might, right? They might very well need Medicaid at some point. They don't think, it's easy for them to think that that's there for somebody else, maybe somebody who doesn't look like them. Whereas when you have universal programs, and I've got to say, this is based on data from a lot of different countries, right? We have
nice.
We have a lot of evidence for this. If you have universal programs that everybody knows that everybody's paid for, everybody benefits from, everybody knows they're going to benefit from it going forward, it's much, much harder to cut those programs, which you'd think would be obvious just from looking even at domestic American examples, much less examples like what we talked about last week with the debate with Destiny about Canada and how Canadian conservatives were opposed to Medicare for all when it was first proposed, but now they don't dare come out against it. Look at the United States. How many Republicans come out and say we should abolish Social Security? They wouldn't dare. So
right, or if they do, they lie about it. So Ben, thank you so much. Artesia, do you have anything to add to the debunk?
I mean, the real yikes is all the people who would die without getting a checkup, like,
Indeed.
Making sure that they have basic access to, just making sure their bodies work. So, yeah, that's the real yikes.
That's the real yikes. Ben Burgess, give them an argument. Logic for the left. Thanks so much, brother.
Thank you.
Folks, can I have David, is there a way somebody could hand me an extra copy of the outline? I got rid of mine by accident. Or print me another copy or something. I'll try to get to a few calls tonight. I'm going to call into the system now, but we got to go get to some sound. Thank you. Let's start with this. This was powerful. This was Nina Turner at the rally in Queens with Bernie and AOC. Nina Turner is probably my favorite American politician. And, I've said this before. The reaction to her drawing these obvious distinctions between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, for that matter, is so telling. That people are whining about this and bothered about this shows that some people don't understand that this is an election and a race, and you talk about the differences. That's why people say, try to draw the distinctions from Warren. I mean, honestly, I don't know how to say it sound anything but profoundly condescending when I talk about it, because it's like I don't understand how people can sort of build up such a fantasy scenario. This is a combat. This is a conflict. They're not running together. They're running against each other. Maybe that will change next summer. Maybe there will be a deal cut. Right now, it's a campaign. And if anything, the Sanders campaign has been, I think, disastrously gentle and nice in not drawing really big distinctions. 2, she lays it out here. And I think the reason that there's such hatred at her is because of, frankly, how profoundly effective she is. This is Nina Turner laying down the truth in Queens.
We got some folks in mainstream and the neoliberal side who really can't understand the difference. But I'm gonna break this down for you. There are many copies. There are people who didn't have the same guts and the same courage as Senator Bernie Sanders to run in 2016. Some people who sat on the sideline when it was hard. There was only one person who stood up to the establishment, and his name is Bernard Sanders. So there are...
That's Walker Bregman.
His name is really Bernard?
Yeah, it's his Wait,
he just doesn't...
Wait,
I knew that, but for someone to say Bernard, it just sounded like so classé.
Nina's been saying that a lot. Nina's been hitting the Bernard Sanders.
Everyone should hit the Bernard.
I agree.
It's a different person when you say Bernard.
He is Bernard. I just want to say, and look, that's true. Bernard Sanders begged Elizabeth Warren to run against Hillary Clinton. She didn't. He did. He built a movement. And he's putting stuff on the table with foreign policy alone that makes him the choice.
Wait, I just have a question. Who could be mad at her? It was a rally, right?
You've not been tuning into a lot of Warren supporters.
I see it, but I don't understand. This is a rally. What are you supposed to do at a rally? You're supposed to rally the troops.
You're supposed to say that Elizabeth Warren is amazing, and that you apologize for supporting Bernie Sanders and you respect her plans. I think that that's what you're supposed to say.
I mean, she didn't call her expletives. I guess
she also mentioned that Elizabeth Warren voted for Trump's 3 military budgets, which is also true, but obviously incredibly fucked up to bring up. It's a very, this is, by the way, This is what the professional middle class critique of Warren supporters is. It's a mind state. I just talked with Adolph Reed. Yes. I read that N+1 piece. It was ridiculous. Like, you critique the professional middle class, but yet many Sanders supporters are professional middle class, managerial class. That's not the point. The point is your mindset. And if your mindset values technocracy over movement and somehow thinks that you can every day on Twitter and social media benefit from vicious, grotesque coverage of Bernie Sanders, and that you erase him and his policy shop every day, and that's totally fine and normal. And then on the flip side, to just merely point out the fact that Bernie Sanders had the courage to take on the Clinton machine and is voted for global humanity and Warren hasn't, that somehow is aggro, in one person's words. That's what professional managerial mindset is about. It doesn't matter whether or not you write for magazines or not. It's your mindset. And that is the kind of twerpy, double standard, entitled mindset that people are critiquing.
Interesting. No, I just feel like whether you're Team Bernie or Team Warren, it's really hard for you to call yourself a progressive without giving props to Bernie for all that he has done to push the conversation to the left. Like, I just really don't think that you can genuinely call yourself a progressive if you cannot say that out loud. Like, that's just really weird to me.
But isn't it predicated? I mean, he has not just the conversation, he built the movement.
Right. We have to say, hey, the grandfather of progressive movement. Like, whether you are Team Bernie or Team Warren, you really are not being genuine if you cannot give him the accolades for that.
Where are you at with it now? You're 50-50?
I'm still 50-50.
I'm mystified. What? I mean, you were talking about Lebanon. What? Why not go with the real deal?
I knew you were going to do this to me.
I got it.
I knew you were going to do this to me.
I just can't believe it. I don't understand.
You know, I'm going to be honest. I've always been like this in my life. I just can't really, rally for one thing, one person.
Right.
I really can't. Like, I have to look at it all on the table together. So I told you I burned.
I know.
I've been burning. But then I like some of the things that Elizabeth Warren has added to the conversation for me, because I was missing as a member of the Black community. I really did want Bernie to do a little more. But he's getting there. He's getting there.
I'm just saying, I mean,
he's getting there.
And even
I'm just not ready to rally
and
yet.
even some of the things that Warren, like, I don't know, like, her mortality plan is sketchy as fuck. Like,
yeah, her education plan is
no, but she centered that whole idea of closing the infant mortality gap, and this is where it does start to get really disturbing to me, because it's like, there's an infant mortality gap because of racism, without a doubt, and also class structure. But then when you look at it, it's like, the biggest dent you can make in that is giving every single human being healthcare.
Healthcare, absolutely.
Her plan talks about, we're going to cut funding for hospitals that underperform. That is the same shit as we're going to cut schools that that is market incentive based bullshit that, if anything, to me, will actually exacerbate the problem. So I don't know. To me, I look at Warren and this is where I do read my Adolph Reed, and it's like, it is not, there's not a single person on the left that is denying the role of race and racism. But then there is another sector where it's like, you can train a candidate like Warren to discourse something, mm-hmm. but then you look at the policy set and it's like, that might actually even increase the problem. Listen, and then, you know what I mean?
This is why I show up here.
Right.
And this is why I tune in.
Right. No,
to the conversation, because I need to see those things on the table against each other. And for every policy matter, I have to look at both of them. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, Bernie over here, and then other times I'm like, oh, I like what you just added to the conversation, Elizabeth. And I think that's what keeps pulling me to the center, to the 50-50. It's not quite 50-50, but I think I'm interested in what she has to add to the conversation. But I'm not Biden at all. I can get on this mic and tell you right now that I am not voting for Joe Biden.
I think that's coming apart pretty quickly.
Yes.
It's like uncomfortable to watch, to be honest.
It's super bad. It's super bad. But
do you hate Buttigieg as much as I hate Buttigieg? Because I hate that guy. There's no one I dislike more than Buttigieg.
You know, what bugs me about Buttigieg is his smugness, to be honest. Like, it's probably a personality thing that I can't get with. And then next, his policies. But the smugness just really irks me. It really just gets under my skin. I'm like, dude, how many people voted for you in your town? What was it, like 10,000?
In the college town that
I was like,
10,000
people live within 3 blocks of like where I live. Like, that's how many people voted for you to be the mayor, and you just come on. You really do talk to me like you are the president already. So.
Right.
But
it's very entitled, and I mean, and also like he was a terrible mayor. I hope people can maybe not lose sight of that. Do you guys want to do the Hillary Clinton? Actually, I'm going to take a quick call, and then we'll do the Tulsi Hillary Clinton drama because
deep sigh.
Well,
yeah, same.
Matt, David wants
to get on topic with today.
Smack YouTube revenue in the face. You're calling from a 215 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
And I recently organized a meeting with the.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi. Tell me your name and where you're calling from.
Hi there, Michael. My name is Viano James. I'm calling in from Georgia again. I wanted to clarify my call from Monday. The Republican I was talking about who wanted to repatriate poor African Americans to Africa.
Okay, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. This is a call that you did. Again, believe it or not, there's a different audience here. So you called the Majority Report, and you said that I remember this actually. You went to a meeting where a Republican candidate for Congress was trying to suggest that African Americans should be repatriated to Africa. Please go forward.
Voluntarily with small grants to start some businesses because they couldn't assimilate into the American economy.
It's a party of Lincoln.
That guy's name is David Callahan. He ran in the 2018 midterms and he lost, but he did garner 70,000 votes. I was just calling because I was a bit tough on him in my call because I was mad about it. He's just in an exploratory phase right now, so hopefully he decides not to run.
I think you should be mad at him. I think that's totally fine.
I'm working on a project right now related to it, and I recently organized a meeting with the Austrian Trade Commissioner and a councilman from a city outside of Atlanta to discuss bringing green foreign direct investment into the community by way of manufacturing plant for wind turbines or solar cells. Because we recently had a successful $150 million investment by a Korean company who creates solar cells in northern Georgia. And the takeaways from the meeting with the commissioner were that we needed to create a set of policies to incentivize and subsidize those industries like they do in Europe. And we needed to create a vocational education system to train those people for them to so they could have people to hire. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on incentivizing like tax incentives for green manufacturers and technology deployers to beef up our supply chains? And
I would, to me, my instinct is to cut out all of the bullshit and just generally do like government New Deal public works programs where people are just paid directly to do all the incredibly enormous amount of work that we need to do. I think that there's been, there's a lot of playing around with the tax code, a lot of incentives. And I don't know if that's quite as effective as just now the other thing I would say though, on the flip side is the biggest interest I have when you talk about like government providing incentives for businesses and so on is could you go to places and identify, like, I don't know what happened with this project, but several years ago, me and Phil McKinsey, when I was working with Phil, we knew there were these two young women that were going on a road trip and they were looking at economically depressed areas that were like basically generating like social businesses and social innovation from the bottom up. And this was totally like they were not part of traditional corporate supply chains. They were not public-private partnerships. They were very organic. And so one part of me would be like, you find those people that are doing those things and you just give them money and stay the fuck out of their way. You don't, that's it, right? Those are my two. Artesia, what do you, Artesia, you should get Artesia's thoughts on this though. Artesia's going to have a lot of thoughts on this.
Can I hear your thoughts too? Also, I had a question about American-led, like sort of global Green New Deal too, but I'll wait till after Artesia.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, well, I was just curious about this guy who's running for office who wanted to repatriate us to Africa. I'm always curious. Like when they say Africa, it's like, well, what country? Because if you are doing this, send me to Kenya, which it's like send me to Kenya, you know, the Silicon Valley of the African continent.
I looked up his position. He's proposing something called Liberia Part 2. Reloaded.
Complete with war crimes.
Liberia Reloaded.
Civil War. Got it.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm also so taken back by it. She was like, what makes him think that, you know, sending me back to Africa to a community that I don't know, a language that I don't speak, a culture that I may not understand is somehow going to get me out of poverty if you give me some micro loan. Like, it's ridiculous. And why would you not invest in businesses in the African-American community in your own backyard?
absolutely.
I think we all know the answer to that. But what's your thought about the green incentives, Artesia?
Well, of course, I'm in favor of green incentives and anything that would foster new businesses, especially in Black communities. I feel like instead of repatriating us, just give us or. I don't even like that term. I don't know why I'm laughing at that. It's just such a weird term, repatriate. Like, where are you sending us? Where am I going? Like, I don't even know. I just had this conversation today with a friend. Like, we have no idea where they took us from. Like, you can't just drop us back on the shores. But, yeah, just drop us there. But you can give us that money and, you know, and let us build small businesses, one of the things that I'm often just really inspired by is Black Twitter and how innovative that space has been in creating businesses out of a conversation that happens, you know, like a lot of times people are just like, I've got this idea. And then, you know, we all have to rally behind that idea and we, you know, raise money and we support it and we order T-shirts or hoodies or merchandise and all of that. So there's so many creative minds in small communities that just don't have access to capital. And I'm constantly trying to figure out how do we get that capital into the hands of these creative minds of people who could really not build the next Facebook, because I don't want them to build the next Facebook.
Please, God, no.
Please don't build the next don't build the next Facebook, but definitely build the business that serves your small community or your global Twitter community, your digital community. There's just so much creativity, and I encounter it on the daily basis as a producer. I'm constantly just meeting people with great ideas and no capital, and not just no capital, but they don't even know where it is or you know how you get access to it. There are times where I've had to explain to people there's public money to make television. I'm on a public TV project right now. Right. The whole entire thing is $2.4 million that came from your tax money that we just had to go out and apply for grants in order to raise. And people don't even know how to find that money. So not just like, here's a pool of money, but let's also educate us on how we find that money and how we apply for that money.
David Callahan. Because you know something crazy. There's actually an interview. He lives in a city called South Fulton. He's the only white guy in his neighborhood. He said that he believed God placed him in that neighborhood to help raise blacks out of poverty. So maybe talk to him, and you guys might be able to get something rolling.
Oh my God! I appreciate the call, man.
I wanted to ask you about an American-led Green New Deal, like for the world, right?
Like real quick, we're real tight on time.
China's Idai Ilu Belt and Road Initiative, or would you just try to keep those two things separate?
I talked with Pepe Escobar recently about Belton Road, and I think that, I need to learn more about Belton Road, but there's no doubt that, look, you need to have a partnership with China and Russia, period, in terms of doing these things. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I really appreciate the call. You're calling from a 646 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Michael Brooks.
Hello. Is this Monique, the long-lost Monique?
Yes, it's the long-lost Monique.
Monique, how are you doing? Welcome to the program. What's on your mind?
I'm all right. I'm going to keep it quick. All I want to say is I'm not offended by what Trump said. I'm just glad he finally put it out there, how all these Republicans think.
Wait, which one? Right. You talking about him saying that he's being lynched? Are you talking about that?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay, go ahead. Go off on that, please.
No, that's my point. I'm not even going to go off on that.
Right.
Because I'm so sick and tired of white victimhood. So you know what? Okay, if he feels that way. Oh, and Lindsey Graham chiming in. Well, I'll leave him alone, too.
No, I won't leave him alone. Mm-hmm. He is a fucking senator from South Carolina saying that that's an appropriate thing to say. Donald Trump compared being impeached to being lynched today. I mean, on some level, I agree with you.
Michael Brooks?
Yes.
I will say this. I've heard this numerous times. We've been hearing this.
Right.
All white people, not all white people. A lot of white people in the they've been saying this for how long? That they've been victimized and they've been getting away. Cops say this. Everyone,
Yep.
All people, white people in power. As a black woman, this ain't nothing new. Hearing this. So I don't know how long. I'm not going to keep getting my blood pressure up over this. But what I will continue to say, y'all need to call your own people out. Oh. So I'm glad you're upset about it. I'm not. We've been hearing this. There are photographs of white people, and I'm glad a lot of black people posted photos of what was happening when lynchings were happening.
Right.
And then they were made postcards. They were made, how long are black people going to have to keep not apologizing, but keep getting upset? And white people don't do it. Y'all the majority. So what are black people supposed to keep doing? Keep getting upset over and over again? We're the ones dying because we get upset over and over and over again. We're the ones suffering health issues. We're the ones doing it. And everyone's like, oh, that's a horrible thing. And then nobody will keep
I like
bringing
the
it
impression. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I can't do it as good as Eddie Murphy or Richard Pryor. But it's like
I think you're actually in the realm for our purposes. I agree with you. And I actually will say though that I thought a lot of people because you know very specifically, Monique, I make a business of I am not going to respond to all of Trump's bullshit, period. I love that. I forget how he put it, but Dave Chappelle had something about this in his new special. Like, Donald Trump is not the only game in town. I agree with that. Right. And I'm also willing to laugh at Donald Trump when he is funny. And I think precisely because of that.
I don't find him funny. See,
when I am able to, but my point is that this is the type of thing, because it is not every single thing that he says, which you just can't do either, in my opinion, that is so disgusting and so repugnant that you need to have a precision on it. And I actually will say,
he called for the lynching of the Central Park Five.
Absolutely.
That's why
that's
I will
exactly
never
right.
find
that's right.
him funny.
I agree with you.
And you people, no, because you just said you find him funny. I don't find him ever funny. That's me.
Artesia, you want to jump in on this for me?
Well, Monique, when you started, I didn't know where you was going when you said I wasn't offended, and I hear you. I hear you. There are days where I have to pick the things that I'm going to be offended by because I feel like it's an onslaught of just offensive things coming out of his mouth. I chose not to be offended by the lynching comment because, just like you said, I'm tired of it. And that was one of those things where I felt like it probably is the job of white people to educate everybody as to why that was not an okay thing to say. Like, I really do agree with you on that. But I also sometimes have to laugh to keep from crying. About what's happening. That's what I'm saying? Like, sometimes I really do have to laugh at the idiot that is in office and the things that he's saying. And he's already there. He has been elected. There has been damage that is done that we know we have to try to reverse in some way when he's out of office.
Generations.
May I just interject and say, by laughing, you normalize him and you find him amusing like he's a clown. Meanwhile, Kurds are being killed. He's not a joke. He's not just these people, whoever voted for him, and they're around. And they're the ones, I'm a regular person. I'm a girl on the subway. I got to worry about, and thank God I do live in New York City, but I just came back from down south. People down south are scared. People down south, like in New York City, we live in a bubble to a certain point.
Listen, we're scared here as well. We're scared here as well. Like, we have NYPD to worry about and on the streets of New York.
That, but then that's even worse because you're laughing at him. And that normalizes him. And people are normalizing him thinking he's still the apprentice person. And it's just a joke. He's not a joke.
Monique, I hear what you're saying. And all I could tell you right now is I think that there is very few things on earth more important than beating this fucking person. And so that's what I'm going to keep working to do.
I agree.
That's could not be more important. I appreciate the call, Monique. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Monique.
See you later. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Good to hear from Monique. All right, one more call, then we have more stories to get to. You're calling from an 847 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
It's Josh from Chicago.
Josh from Chicago. What's up? What's on your mind?
Oh, I want to talk about my day with the teachers who were on the teacher strike.
Yeah, talk about it. What happened?
So, I think for most, the two things that I think were notable for me. One, how fucking cruel Lori Lightfoot's being right now at the moment. And really how barbaric she's being. One of the reasons they're striking is because of class size right now. Apparently, the classroom sizes, I talked with one teacher, said it's one of the classes she teaches it's like 30 kids, I think, or something, which is a lot. This also has mental health repercussions on kids who attend these classes. And Lightfoot campaigned on a platform, basically, if not progressive, at least liberal. Mm-hmm. And one that was definitely pro-educator, pro-teacher. Right. And she's basically just thrown that away and is acting like Rahm Emanuel. And it's actually extremely disappointing because there was at least some promise, the way she's handled some police reform stuff, I think has been good. But this is just a disaster. But I think the other thing that was really interesting is you're talking about Warren right now. She spoke today after teachers to the teachers on the picket line, which I think is great. But there were I talked with a few people who were pretty dejected that she basically used them as props, or at least it came off that way, because she refused to sort of attack Lori Lightfoot. She refused to go at Lori Lightfoot for being the one who is actually causing the problem. She refused to call out Lightfoot, for example, for taking money from people who are contributing to the poor factors that are going on right now in some of these schools. And,
right.
To me, these are the people who are upset who are going to go and vote for Bernie. These are people, these are working class
they
people.
Should.
And
Bernie's different.
Good. I know.
Bernie's talked. Bernie's got Shama Sawant's back. I mean, look, I'm sorry. I just will keep going back to this. Bernie, it's not even just that he's the best candidate. He's the different thing.
Mm-hmm. He's not afraid to take shots at Lightfoot.
And it shows up in every dimension. It shows up in him talking about Shama Sawant. It shows up in him using his email list to warn people about ICE raids. It shows up in him using his email list to raise money for abortion providers. It shows up in him talking about not only Donald Trump and the terrorism that he represents, but the context that gives rise to Donald Trump. And it shows up, Ben Burgess and Ian Jacobin, in him being the only candidate calling for freeing Lula. And these global things cannot be ignored. Elizabeth Warren, this new 21st century version of butter at home, guns abroad, is not only morally wrong, it's not strategic, because we are in an interdependent world. And you don't even have to impugn somebody's integrity. It can be very nice. Elizabeth Warren can go, "Oh, I support the teachers and it's nice. We're going to go there and do a campaign stop." But she is not of a movement. Bernie Sanders is. It's a fundamental difference. Yep. I appreciate the call, Josh.
There's an action tomorrow at 8, by the way, at City Council for people.
Action at 8, City Council, 8 a.m. or 8 p.m.?
Yeah, 8 a.m. So it starts at Sears Tower, and then they go to the City Council, which is Daley Plaza, where there's going to be a vote taken. People are encouraged to either dress in, usually people have dressed in red for Ed. People are dressing in black tomorrow, at least some people. But if you can make either the march that will start at Sears Tower that will go to the City Council, or the action at the City Council at 8, or I think it's a little after 8.
Thanks, Josh.
Because
appreciate it.
Show up for these people.
Thank you. Absolutely.
I also just want to include in the shout out that we were making earlier to the Chicago teacher strikes, how influential the DSA, the local branch, has been in the strike so far. They've been passing out lunches to students and to teachers. They've adopted 11 picket lines, and they're doing a lot of the on-the-ground support that is so important. We talk a lot about electoral campaigns, but this is when we talk about, outside of electoral work, this is exactly what it is, and it's wonderful to have so many people that you can mobilize for actions like this.
Absolutely.
And if there's any information on how we can support those striking teachers and the students, please let us know and let me know so we can get that information out there.
Absolutely. Please let me take one Discord question, then we'll do a few more stories before we go. I want to warn everybody, I'm sorry, we will definitely not get to all calls. I just wanted to get to some tonight. Michael, do you think Evo Morales has done damage to the Latin American left in spite of some big achievements by failing to pass the torch to a protege, not respecting term limits, and infrastructure extractive programs that have been bad environmentally and to hurt the indigenous base that he's come from? Well, I mean, in the narrow terms of your question, yes. Of course, there's some problems there. There's problems in environmental policy, although I will say the effort to blame the Amazon forest fires on Evo Morales is a pure propaganda operation and a radical lie put out by people who oppose the Latin American left and want to run interference for the Bolsonaro regime. So that's very important to know about. There's some reporting about that we'll talk about later in another episode. I think it's tricky. I mean, look, in an ideal world, and I think it is a common problem amongst a lot of leaders, including leaders like Morales, that we need to emphasize have accomplished incredible things. He's cut poverty by half in Bolivia. He's done a huge amount for indigenous community as well and for broader social rights in one of the most unequal countries in the world, right? And this is a global pattern. You have incredible leaders who don't necessarily groom broader organizations and proteges. Now, conversely, let's look on the other hand. I mean, Chavez picked Maduro. Is Maduro as good as Chavez? No. Rafael Correa picked Lenin Moreno, who has sold out everything that Correa achieved in Ecuador. And, Dilma Rousseff is an incredibly admirable leader who really deserves a lot more credit and faced a coup and misogyny and so on. But, was she as talented or had the capacity that Lula did? Clearly not. So there is this tension between facilitating a broader organization, but also recognizing when one person really does have distinct leadership capacity. That's one thing, like I will say in Argentina, and I acknowledge the complexity of it, but Cristina de Kirchner and Nestor de Kirchner both were up to the task of doing that, just in terms of like their political skill sets as presidents and as leaders. So Evo's in a position where he amends the Constitution to take a fourth term. I have no doubt that he won this last election. I don't buy the opposition claims that I have no doubt that his approval has gone down a bit, but it would be shocking to me if somebody who is delivering so much material gains to a country was really going to be voted out of office. So in the bigger picture, is Evo bad for the Latin American left? No, of course not. He's a successful pink tide leader. In the much larger context, does there need to be a critique of how leaders like that do or don't build out a base around them? And then the next phase of questions is really going to be, how do we synchronize political and civil rights with economic rights? And in Western discourse, economic rights are totally ignored, never acknowledged as important, and civil rights are valorized even though they're actually not respected in most places. And I do think there's a tendency amongst some, Evo talks about his friends in Turkey and China and so on, that don't respect those civil rights, and those also are a matter. So the question is a synthesis. I would have voted for Evo Morales if I was in Bolivia, though. I should be very clear about that. There is no question that he was better than the alternatives, and there's no question that he's lifted a lot of people out of poverty. And that really is my baseline. I have to be honest about that. You wanted to add something, David?
It's sort of just out there for everyone else. I've always found, just generally as like a concept philosophically, term limits to be a very strange idea in the first place. I feel
they're undemocratic.
Like if you have an election, right, that's the question. Like
right.
Who do you want to be the leader? And like that's this fixation on term limits. And remember, like we introduced term limits in the United States after FDR.
Yeah,
right.
And we should have kept electing FDR. I wish we could reanimate his dead body. All right. No,
so, that's my only point. Is like, they're always trying to put limits on very popular left-wing candidates, and I've always found that to be very strange.
No, that's a really important point. And it's funny because even the critique of Morales that I think is absolutely valid, there is some personality cult tendencies and things like that. There's no doubt about it. But it doesn't necessarily mean giving way to another like president. It means making sure you're training cadres, you have a really powerful, broader organization, right? That might be a valid critique. But if he can run for a fourth term and win, then cool. And I also have to really emphasize in Latin America, but I think this applies globally, you are not talking about right-wing parties that will deliver on the things that people discourse concern about. If you think that a right-wing party is going to take power from Evo Morales in Bolivia and upgrade environmental standards and protect people's freedom of speech, you're beyond delusional. Like you're in a state of fantasy. So in the relative world of where we're in, he is an important leader and there's a huge amount to criticize him on, sure. But I'm certainly glad he's there, particularly given the right-wing tide now. This is an amazing compare and contrast of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on capitalism. And feel the burn.
I know these are terribly complicated questions and our time is up, but are you a capitalist?
No, I'm not a capitalist.
So you don't believe in the profit motive, free enterprise? If I have a better mousetrap, I make more money.
There's something to be said for free enterprise on a local level and the competition. But what we're happening in our society is we don't live in a free enterprise society. You live in a corporate capitalist society where in virtually every single industry you have giant multi-billion-dollar corporations competing, driving the small businessman
But let's
out.
pretend it would work without all that kind of acquisition of power that is unfair and doesn't...
Do I believe that the profit motive is fundamental to
I like
human
that.
nature?
Let's pretend it didn't work the way it works. All right, go ahead.
Where
Let's
in virtually
pretend we didn't
every
need
single
oxygen to
industry,
breathe.
you have giant, multi-billion-dollar corporations competing, driving the small businessman
But let's
out.
pretend it would work without all that kind of acquisition of power that is unfair and doesn't.
Do I believe that the profit motive is fundamental to human nature? The answer is no. I think the spirit of cooperation, that you and I can work together better rather than having to compete against each other and destroy each other.
Bernard Sanders,
what he
Mayor,
said.
Burlington, Vermont.
You don't think capitalists are bad people?
I am a capitalist. Come on. I believe in markets. What I don't believe in is theft. What I don't believe in is cheating. That's where the difference is. I love what markets can do. I love what functioning economies can do. They are what make us rich. They are what create opportunity. But only fair markets. Markets with rules. Markets without rules is about the rich take it all.
This is a fantasy. I mean, this is like, look, if we're in a world where politics is so constrained, where in order to have middling liberal reforms, you need to do the ritual of discoursing that you affirm capitalism, fine. Bernie Sanders has changed that world. And we can be real about how capitalism actually works and how it corresponds to power structures. And in that context, reifying this fantasy that there's some ideal state of capitalism and the problem is corruption, not power, is actually actively reactionary.
And
in my opinion, let me do a Bernie thing. In my view.
And this idea when, you hear talking about, fair markets, capitalism works in this way because if you have a business, right, you get to a certain point of accumulation that it makes sense to start to control other processes of production, right? So if you make shirts, eventually it makes sense to own the cotton production, right? And that's the way that capitalism has worked forever, right? So it's not these brilliant people like, oh, we need to acquire our provider, people providing us goods. It's just the way that the system works, right? So this idea that we need fair markets that are going to get us away from monopoly is always going to be a constant process of fighting against the actual logic of this system versus the socialist conception, right? We're just saying like, actually, let's have very efficient ways of producing goods. Let's have coordination between all of these different producers without the competition motive that absolutely destroys, markets, is devastating for workers and is very damaging to the environment.
Absolutely.
Sorry, what I have to add, for the average person who is showing up to vote, capitalism versus socialism, they don't really understand what that means, right? So, even, as a personal anecdote, my brother who worked for the MTA just said to me the other day, like, I don't want anything to do with socialism. But it wasn't until I had to show him how being an MTA employee, a civic work employee.
You do have something to do with socialism.
Right. I'm like, this is, socialism. And I'm sure this is because of, our terrible public education system that no one understands the difference between these words. So when I hear them both talk on these high levels, I'm often reminded that your average voter has no idea what the fuck they're talking about.
I think that's true, but the polling, though, is interesting. I mean, the polling, particularly amongst younger people, is capitalism is quite unpopular. And I guess what I'm saying is, and I think, ironically, partially due thanks to Republicans, because they called Obama a socialist for 8 years. So it started to mean to normal people, like, you mean being like a halfway decent human being?
Right.
But I think in an opportunity, see, we're in a profoundly unique moment where a leading presidential contender is more honest and more real about how this system works than anybody in modern politics. Mm-hmm. So then when Elizabeth Warren comes along with her progressive brand and reaffirms all of the core mythology and bedtime stories about our system, it's quite destructive in precisely the education process you're talking about.
Right. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how we get to a point where we do educate people on, what is the policy shakeout of Bernie versus Warren when she says I am a capitalist versus I am a socialist. Like, what does that mean for the everyday people?
All student debt is gone instead of some. All medical debt is gone. All a no bullshit healthcare system.
Right. And I'm asking so that way I have the information and I can actually go out there and evangelize myself because I'm like, bro, socialism is not like communist Cuba. You know, like that's what he.
It's a little bit like communist Cuba though, because communist Cuba is kind of cool.
Right. It's kind of. I agree. I was like,
there's like, come on, baby Balthrop, we got to be real here.
You're right. No, you're right. But I, as somebody who you want to be a foot soldier out there speaking for Bernie and his progressive ideas.
You know,
it's like,
I do.
Give me those pieces so that way I can teach people. So that way I'm not saying you're a capitalist or, you know, like I'm saying this is tangibly what those things mean for your everyday. So when I see these clips, yes, for somebody like me who's like, you know, in the weeds on these things, I can make way with it. But for your everyday person who's going to their 9 to 5, driving the bus, you know, give me those tools so I can break it down for them and they understand the difference.
I'm totally with you. Socialism should not be a subculture.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, my larger point would be as somebody who, you know, is from a working class background, you know, and also somebody who's from the South, especially when I became a socialist, when I was talking to people in my community, you know, the working class community, not when I was at university, because at university, fighting with these rich kids, you know, to be quite honest about socialism was exhausting. But when I would go back home, you know, most people in the working class, like these ideas, socialism to me, when I started to really learn about it academically, it wasn't that foreign. Because my entire life I had recognized, for example, that the bosses and the people who owned the companies that my family were working at were taking advantage of them. Absolutely. I recognized oftentimes that the society that I was living in was not a society that was designed for me to thrive. And when I started to thrive and when I got into university and most of my friends in my community didn't, I started to realize that I was very out of place in that new world as well. So these kind of things are intuitive. Now, not saying that like everybody who's working class, you know, necessarily like knows all the answers to these things, but it doesn't take as much work, I think, as a lot of people think to explain to people the dynamics. You see it all the time in working class communities. You have a lot of conspiracy theories. You have a lot of things that's like, oh, well, there must be some group of people who are controlling the world. And, you know, you say to them, it's like, no, it's the economic system. It's, you know, it's a lot better than these secret meetings that are going on in the woods, right? That are, you know, just controlling.
The secret people are called capitalists.
Exactly.
Right.
But the thing with capitalism is it's who's going to decide an economic priority. Is it going to be the people or the workers, or is it going to be the capitalist just because he owns the shit?
Exactly.
And I think when you put it that way, people don't care about who owns something. They think the people or the workers should be the ones deciding.
But I have to say, anecdotally, you know, at least in my experience, most people that I know who are working people are certainly like, well, I wouldn't say my family were working people, but they were definitely low income people. It's part of the reason they were low income is they weren't working. But I think, I'm sorry, Mom, but I think the, you know, put it this way. When I talk to actual capitalists, like people actually working in the market and really making money, they actually understand capitalism in a pretty similar way to what I understand capitalism as. When I talk to actual working and lower income people, they understand capitalism as I do. The only people who don't are I'm trying not to be acerbic here, but academic types who have a theoretical, and I think that is partially what annoys me so much about Warren, is it is I mean, I only have an undergraduate degree, but I did, you know, I went to Bates, and that's a top 20 liberal arts school, and I was around this kind of discourse. You know, I understand, and I, you know, when I've read My Economist and New Republic and all of this, and, you know, I know these papers, these white papers she's talking about. I know this, like, well, no, what you really need is this theoretical model where the stakeholders all work together. And you know, there's an adjustment of monopolies, which makes capitalism work in the most blah, blah, blah. And then you go and you talk to people who actually do capitalism, and they say, well, my job is to try to eliminate all the other construction firms in this area. And then I jack up the prices, right?
So there
are
no fair markets.
No, it's a total pure mythology. And it's not, and again, in my view of a socialist economy, you could, of course, like, you know, Mondragon is a workers' cooperative. It competes. Like, you're never going to completely eliminate competition. There's still going to be choice. There's still going to be, in fact, even markets. I think one of the biggest problems is that when we talk about markets, they've done such an incredible propaganda job that people think of like, oh, markets, that's like going to the CSA and getting my vegetable share. No, we're talking about Exxon. We're talking about the commanding heights of the economy, as well as broad public commons air, water, the internet are run by private monopolies that have more power over your life than anything else in the modern world. And that is not a function of corruption. That is a function of the logic of capitalism. And that's another, and in fact, corruption discourse that she leans on so much has been the handmaiden. This is the point I always make, but from Brazil to India, the far right governments that have risen have all talked about corruption. That we're dealing with a moral problem. We're not dealing with a political problem. And she echoes that in a way that profoundly concerns me. Because I actually have no problem acknowledging that Elizabeth Warren, of course she's better than Joe Biden. Of course she has some good ideas and so on and so forth. But her fundamental baseline is so vulnerable to attack and so reaffirming of some of our most destructive mythology that it really disturbs me that people who identify as progressive thought leaders and on the left are affirming it because they're missing the bigger signals here. That's partially what's annoying me so much.
And I just add sort of as a period to this question about talking to working class people about socialism versus capitalism. I think like as a strategy, it's just much better to start from just like the class struggle and class awareness. So it's like when you make it clear, it's like, you're a worker and you're producing for, your boss, and there's this whole group of people that are living off of your labor. A lot of people can recognize that. A lot of people complain about that in different language all the time, making the point that, all the people in our community, we can't afford to buy houses. We all have to rent, things like that.
Right.
Like that kind of awareness, if you can start getting people to think of themselves as a part of a group versus themselves as an individual, I've always, at least that was for me what really changed my perspective. I mean, I was a right-wing Republican when I was young, which is embarrassing enough to admit. But when I stopped thinking...
I wish you had seen the face of, I forgot his name in the back when he said that. He's like, oh, I didn't know that. Hey.
Do we want to say your name on air? Okay, I try to be respectful. He's a patron visiting, so I don't know whether people want to be private or not.
Sorry, I got distracted by the audience's reaction to
Wait, real quick round table. We got to leave in a few minutes, but real quick. Okay, that was very brave of you.
Yes.
What is our most embarrassing political phase that we've ever gone through? You were a conservative Republican. Matt, what's your most embarrassing political phase?
I bought a Richard Dawkins atheism t-shirt.
Ooh, that's worse than being a Republican. Much worse. Artesia, you remember the fruit of Islam?
Well, I mean, my dad was a 5%er, if anybody knows anything about that.
Absolutely.
So I did grow up calling my mom Earth or
I think
whatever.
that was one thing with me. I don't remember. I was reading.
I'm trying to.
Wait, you don't.
No, I'm really trying to think about. I went to a Quaker school. I've been a burning. We used to have to go. I went to school just a couple of blocks away from where we're recording right now, and down the block from the Brooklyn Borough Hall. And as detention, or if you were late too many times, you had to go and do the silent protest against the death penalty on the steps of Brooklyn Borough Hall with the Quakers on Wednesdays. That was our detention.
And that never made you become a Republican?
No.
If that happened to me, I would be a Reaganite. I would be make America great again.
I mean, if anything, I feel like I was super progressive, and then maybe I crept a little to the center, and now I'm back over there.
Well, not exactly.
No, I didn't go that far because I was already left.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, I had a period of time where I was unhealthily interested in third way politics. I'll own that. I was super into Bill Clinton and Tony Blair. I'm not gonna lie. I was totally
I like this confessions moment.
Absolutely. All right. Final call of the night. You're calling from an 818 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael. This is Dave from Jamaica. What's up?
Dave from Jamaica. What's up?
Hello.
How you doing? What's on your
Where
mind?
in Jamaica are you?
Mom, right in the middle, Manchester.
That's where my family's from Mandeville. Country people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we live in the bush.
Yeah, in the bush. My dad from the bush.
But yeah, I'll make this quick since you guys want to go home. So I know you did the Tim Pool thing earlier, right?
Did we?
Can you hear me?
I don't remember. I think I made fun of Tim. Yes, I did. I made fun of Tim Pool earlier. Yes.
I think
Correct.
you guys are being nice because I actually put myself through the torture of looking through it. Let's just say if Tim Pool becomes a race realist in the next 5 years, I wouldn't be shocked.
Oh, I totally believe it. I'm not. Let me be very clear. Fuck Tim Pool. I'm just saying that. Look, it's the Joe Biden principle. Fuck Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I happen to find it uncomfortable to watch a man deteriorate like that. And Tim Pool is so fucking stupid. Like I don't know what it is.
Tim Pool's a galloping collection of things you should be embarrassed about, but he's been monetized to the point where he can't feel
Look
that.
at Leck coming through with the Hitchens line. He is a I'm sitting there, Dave, and I'm watching a guy cite a Marvel movie with an uncomfortable giggle who's wearing a beanie as a fully grown adult. Okay, I'm embarrassed. It's not a question of whether I don't feel any sympathy for him. I certainly have no respect for him. It's just visceral embarrassment. That's all I could say. It's like watching Trump walk and you realize that he's wearing diapers underneath his khakis, okay? It's even for Donald Trump, I feel embarrassment. That's all I'm saying, Dave.
No, I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying I put myself through watching the whole of that, and I don't even think Sam enjoyed that.
You know what? I think that is quite astute of you because Sam is a person who takes such joy from arguing with idiots.
Yeah, Sam.
And he looked stressed and pressed.
They did that last week, and I remember coming in the morning, and Sam was like, "Yeah, I talked to Tim Pool, and like he's kind of an idiot, sort of thing." But he didn't seem like I destroyed this guy.
And then he said Thanos, and I said, "Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's because Judge Brandeis said." No, Sam was just kind of like, yeah.
I was frankly surprised at how
Tim Pool. He's a beanie. He's a fucking idiot.
I also watched the whole thing.
I don't get enough sleep.
But I watched it very, very sped up because I think watching Tim Pool. The thing about Tim Pool is he's too much of a coward to disagree with Sam, which was the amazing
that's
thing.
what it is. That's
like
what it is. Every single libertarian crackpot who has argued with Sam is like, yeah, I am comparing energy efficient light bulbs to Stalinism, and I'm going to do it again.
Like Tim Pool.
That's why Tim Pool is just like, oh, well, you have a good point there. On the other hand, have you ever seen Iron Man 3?
Yeah, I'm not saying I have a problem with allowing more immigrants in. I'm just saying my parents might get confused by a Marvel movie.
Yeah. That's all the point is. It was just embarrassing, Dave. Trust me, I don't respect Tim Pool. If that's what you're concerned
I'm not
about,
criticizing you on that, Mike. Not at all.
I have no respect for Tim Pool.
Quick, I'm going to kind of help knock down the eugenicist argument. If all the poor people on planet Earth were to just disappear, carbon emissions would go down by like 10%. So it's not even. I don't know where this talking point comes from. That
Malthus. That's where it comes from. And if you accept the science, but you don't have a class analysis, it's going to lead to bad things. Dave, smile. You're in Jamaica. Thank you.
Later, man.
You hear it?
I heard it.
When are we going to do TMBS in Jamaica?
I don't know, man. I want to make sure it's productive. So I might look for people who are willing to discuss certain topics.
Dave, I won't do any Michael Manley jokes. Come on. Dave was all uptight because I said we were going to pretend to do like someone's going to be Siaga and Manley and we were going to recreate the wars of the 70s. I'm not going to do that, Dave. Come on.
I know.
So you should be excited. You should be excited. Come on, man.
I'll say it like this. People are the same everywhere. They have their sacred cows and they'll get bent out the
We're not going to do any of that.
Offend everybody.
We're not going to do it. We're going to do a great Jamaica TMBS live show. Come on.
It would be great. I think he'll handle it. I know you know where the safe places to go.
Trust me, we're not going to talk about it. We're going to do a live show in Jamaica where there is nothing involving Jamaican content except for Kofi is great. That's it. We're in Jamaica. Everybody listen to Chronics. Okay. Donald Trump's a fucking
later, man.
All right, Dave, thank you so much.
Bye, Dave.
I really do legitimately want to do a TMBS in Jamaica. All right, let's do the bad. David, do you have the story in front of you, though? because you might need to set the story up a little bit.
But it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good. No good, really bad for you. But it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I just want to say, like, he's so remedial. Like,
he's real remedial.
It just really bothers me that I had to work so hard to amass this vocabulary, and I still get in these rooms and feel like I don't know enough SAT words. But this man gets to say things like, "It's really good," and "It was a tremendous." Phone call, and like he has like 5 adjectives. It really fucking blows me.
I didn't start anything with the wife.
Like that's the part. Going back to what Monique talked about earlier, that's the part I can't laugh at. His remedial vocabulary.
That's how stupid he is.
Yeah, like the remedial vocabulary.
That is very, very Brooklyn upper middle class.
Yeah, the one that matters.
Like, I could deal with kidnapping the kids,
right?
But I'll tell you what. This guy he doesn't have a thoracis. Or a thesaurus, whatever the fuck. I'm sorry. That was a little remedial of me.
Like, is that the New England pronunciation of that word?
That was a dinosaur with a big vocabulary.
I actually didn't even know what he was talking about for a moment.
Neither did I. I had no idea.
I just gave you a little dyslexia.
Right. I had
All right,
no
and
idea.
for real, I do. Don't get triggered. I do have dyslexia, so shut up.
Okay.
Shut up. That's a real diagnosis.
Thoracic.
Leave me alone. Yeah, and no bullshit. It really is. Okay. Okay. Lin-Manuel Miranda has been an agent of neoliberalism and austerity in the colonial island of Puerto Rico. He tried to rebrand himself by supporting the uprising of several months ago, but of course we knew not to believe him. We don't believe you. You need a change of profession. Or you need to apologize for Hamilton.
Okay, he's not a Jay-Z fan. You need more people is how that was supposed to go.
I know that's, Artesia. He doesn't need more people because I don't trust Lin-Miranda's people. Does he need a Hamilton chorus line?
I was just fixing that for the audience so they knew how that line was
Lin-Miranda, we don't believe you. You need more people.
Thank you.
And so here he is with George Clooney promoting Nescafe in Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Rico, as has been pointed out to me multiple times, and I've had the fortune of spending some time in Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico doesn't need to be introduced to coffee by a multinational monoculture corporation that is trying to privatize water across the globe. It actually has a very vibrant coffee market and culture. So months after the governor is removed from office because of general disgust with the capitalist and colonial exploitation of Puerto Rico, Lin-Miranda is back with George Clooney telling people to drink some of the worst coffee in the world on an island that has great coffee.
And in an island that's been devastated through environmental catastrophe. Right. And those pods are so wasteful.
So wasteful.
That's right.
And we find out today that they actually did withhold aid from them.
Of course.
Did withhold aid, so...
Matt, I mean, this goes without saying, this is terrible. Hamilton is also terrible to the point of being literally embarrassing to watch and hear. Matt, oh my God, Jesus.
After Hurricane Maria, Puerto Rico really became our full-time job.
And it's a branded, branded piece of content.
Of course it's a branded piece of content. This is George Clooney and Lin-Manuel Miranda reminding us of why
local crops were totally wiped out. So we formed this coalition. I call them the Coffee Avengers. It's Nespresso and Hispanic Federation, getting seeds from here and getting technological assistance from here to help local farmers back up on their feet. Everyone said, but this is going to take a long time. And I said, well, you don't call the Avengers when it's easy. You call the Avengers when it's hard.
You know, as a content producer, I know how much it costs to produce this, 30-second piece, and to know that it's Puerto Rico and Nespresso and Lin-Manuel, I'm actually disgusted. You spent this amount of money to promote this brand. If you really cared about coffee growers in Puerto Rico, you could create a co-op model for these coffee growers that would actually benefit them, and they'd see that money way faster than going through Nespresso. And as you Wow.
But Nestle's a really sweet corporation.
Yeah, Nestle's a really sweet
nothing
corporation.
weird about
They haven't done anything like deprive people of water across the globe.
Wow.
Try to destroy breastfeeding so they could get people hooked on horrifying baby formulas. But Matt, there might be a bigger reason as to why Lin-Manuel Miranda is involved in all of these disgusting things. Take us over. You are a resident CIA expert.
Well, this is a theory I've had for a little bit, and I was happy to see other people come up with it recently. So a person named Najma Sharif put on Twitter, in 50 years, who do you think will learn was funded by the CIA to neutralize dissent? And Sharia pre-law, which is a very funny at on Twitter.
Sharia pre-law? That's so great.
Said Hamilton the musical, people of color rapping from the perspective of slave owners about the need for a bourgeois revolution in a British colony and the necessity to establish capital finance instruments. Absolutely the feds.
Going back to what I said earlier, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that's a damn good one.
Is that conspiracy theory?
I don't know.
Or is that just reading the signs correctly?
Right. Hitchens' line is like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I am a theorist of conspiracies.
Right.
Yeah. That's perfect. All right, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just take a minute to do the Tulsi Gabbard, Hillary Clinton drama before we get out of here. Many of you Tulsi stands were like, you're not going to talk about this because you don't have the courage to talk about it. You know, the courage. Let me just say this. I'm mainly not talking about it that much because I don't care. And
it's
just
Bernie
as
o'clock
Elizabeth Warren, sorry?
Because it's Bernie o'clock right now.
Literally. And just as I don't have time for like, well, I mean, I like Bernie, but Elizabeth Warren wrote Medium posts. I don't have time for your fucking crank ass bullshit about Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang. By the way, just now, and this was a Discord question, Bernie Sanders has announced this evening, as reported by Ryan Grimm, new radical protections for whistleblowers. Unprecedented protections for whistleblowers. Yet another step that he is making that no one else has taken, including the supposedly anti-war candidate. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get Bernie Sanders elected president because this is serious. Now, Hillary Clinton, who is deranged, who is ridiculous, who is narcissistic, who is delusional, came out recently and said that Jill Stein was a Russian asset, the Green Party candidate. I would say Jill Stein is not a Russian asset. She's a moron.
And she needs to tell us where that recount money went.
And she needs to. I actually respect that. I like that.
I just want to know.
Like,
what
I'm here for the recount money.
I just really want to know what happened.
Sorry,
to the recount
suckers.
Money.
I don't care. So, and there's one serious. Well, David's going to do the other serious point because he's a Tulsi stan. So we'll throw it in for that. Hillary Clinton accused essentially Tulsi Gabbard of treason, which is punishable by death. That actually is dangerous and deranged. And everybody should condemn that. That's insane. That's demented. And I remember a couple of years ago when people were like, oh my God, Donald Trump is saying lock her up. That's so dangerous. Hillary Clinton just went on a podcast and essentially accused this woman of being a sleeper agent or being groomed to be a sleeper agent. That actually is dangerous and deranged of Hillary Clinton. Here's Tulsi, but also the biggest favor in the world for Tulsi Gabbard. Stop fucking around. Go vote for Bernie Sanders. This is Tulsi Gabbard thanking Hillary Clinton for keeping her relevant in the presidential race.
Hillary Clinton, your foreign policy has been a disaster for our country and the world. It's resulted in the deaths and injuries of so many of my brothers and sisters in uniform. It's devastated entire countries, millions of lives lost, refugee crises, our enemy, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, strengthened. We've seen an increase in Iranian and Russian influence in the region. Turkey is emboldened, and we've seen an exacerbation of the problem of nuclear proliferation by overthrowing Gaddafi in Libya. Yet, despite this damage that you have done to our country and the world, you want to continue your failed policies, directly or indirectly through the Democratic nominee. It's time for you to acknowledge the damage that you've caused. And it is long past time for you to step down from your throne so that the Democratic Party can lead with a new foreign policy, which will actually be in the interest of and benefit to the American people.
Okay. So first of all, Tulsi Gabbard does not call for freeing Lula. She has not said that we will use foreign aid to pressure Israel on the apartheid state of Israel. And she mentioned Iran there in a weird way, which I would remind everybody that Tulsi Gabbard was an Iran deal skeptic and has voted for sanctions packages from Iran in addition to appearing with the most extreme far-right interests in Israel, not to mention supporting Narendra Modi while he does what he's doing in Kashmir, which not only is a massive human rights abuse, but could in fact trigger a actual hot war in South Asia. So just so everybody knows. So just so you know.
Yeah, I mean, Tulsi on Iran, she, on her campaign website, she has places that she differs with Trump rhetorically on Iran, and then she touts her previous Iran hawk votes.
And I only say this to say, I'm going to get to David in a second, just because I know this audience is, I know there's people out there who are still kind of Tulsi Stanish. I will say in the bigger picture, Hillary Clinton should not say a fucking thing about anyone.
Goddamn thing.
Hillary Clinton has a record of coups in Honduras and Haiti, has a record of war in Libya. Whatever else you think of Gaddafi, she joked about him being anally raped and murdered on the street. She backed the coup in Brazil. She's backed actions of regime change in Venezuela. She supports everything Israel wants to do whenever. Her foreign policy is obscene. Her corporate policies are obscene. She managed to lose to Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton,
and no one has asked for her help in this election.
No one has asked for her help, and no one needs her help except for Tulsi Gabbard. So Hillary Clinton is trash, should shut the fuck up and go away. She's actually legitimately disgusting. Ask the Haitian people. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what is very worrying about this, though, is how easy it is to make these kind of accusations, and people have become so wild about Russia, like they see it everywhere.
Right.
And there's a piece in Newsweek that I just wanted to highlight that's really frightening to me, because this person, Naveed Jamali, who is one of these former spies who now is going to tell all, puts,
definitely trust those people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he was a double agent.
Newsweek? Just wanted to check our sources.
But if he's alive, it's not what he says he
But
is.
if you see in the title of this piece, he says the evidence is clear, and we don't have time to go through the entire article. But in this article, he cites zero evidence that Tulsi is a Russian agent. And the reason that it's frightening is because if people can just throw this accusation around, you can really cause a lot of damage. And what's even more frightening is the way that they're using it. So the argument here is that even if Tulsi doesn't know that she's being used by the Russians, she could still be a Russian asset. Mm-hmm. And if you see how wild people have become over this whole Russia scandal, we're not that far off from this kind of attack being used against very legitimate political critics of the United States.
Bernie Sanders
empire.
wants to do a work in partnership with Russia and China for a Green New Deal.
Exactly.
You could be unwittingly working with Russia. It's insane. It's
a
very
really dangerous game.
It is very dangerous.
We need to call it out as much as we can, because we could be in a very frightening kind of future. I mean, I thought Matt Taibbi's piece in Rolling Stone was really great about this, that basically everyone is a Russian asset except for the MSNBC centric.
Right, except for all of the former defense industry or current defense industry and intelligence ghouls that run around cable news demonizing people.
And to those MSNBC centrists, we say this.
And it is long past time for you to step down from your throne so the Democratic Party can lead with a new foreign policy.
That is my favorite part. I was like, she's on a throne? She didn't win. What are you talking
Throne
about?
of skulls.
That's what I love. Is like Tulsi Gabbard though is feeding literally Hillary Clinton is tweeting at Donald Trump. Don't tempt me. What do you mean? So you can come in and lose to him again? So you can come in and have a awe-aspiring, world-class global fuck-up again?
Hillary, please enter the race so you can slice into Biden and Warren's.
Yeah, please. Hurt Elizabeth Warren. I would love to see. By the way,
That's absolutely not happening.
The Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton Twitter emoji war would be hilarious. And we can work on the side to elect Bernie Sanders. Artesia Balthrop, you're amazing.
Thank you for always having me.
Thank you so much. Of course. You're a regular. I'm honored.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you'll be with us at Philly. Thanks, new patrons. Thanks to the whole team. Thanks for coming, AJ. Thanks, all of you. Peace and love. This Sunday, Harvey K. Upcoming content includes Adolph Reed, which I'm very excited about, an additional interview with Pepe Escobar. columnist for Asia Times, Brazilian foreign policy analyst.
Other big things.
A lot of big things and other big things. All right. Peace and love. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.